I don't tell this story to make you nervous about your doorbell at night. I tell it because it happened to me, and it bent something in my head that hasn't bent back. You know me. I'm not dramatic. I've closed shop with grease still on my hands and driven home through thunderstorms without blinking. I used to think a late shift was just a late shift. Some tired people, some cash tips with pizza grease on them, and a drive under streetlights that look like the world's worst Christmas decorations. But this messed me up. It still messes me up. I was working nights at Valerio's, the little pizza place over by the auto parts store. You've probably driven past it 100 times. We had the same neon sign that flickered like it was trying to blink SOS, and a bell on the door that never sounded right. Valerio himself was a pro at yelling from the kitchen without leaving the oven. He could shout your name while flipping dough, and you'd feel like you got called to the principal's office. Anyway, it was a Thursday night. Slow enough that we were playing Guess the Seat Stain with the two regulars in the booths, but busy enough to stay open. The 10 o'clock news was on in the corner, mounted up high like a shrine we never paid attention to. I was boxing up a large pepperoni and mushroom when the anchor's tone dropped. That fake news sad voice they all have. "Update on the missing delivery driver," she said, and the words cut through the hiss of the soda fountain. I looked up because, solidarity. Delivery drivers are like a weird little union of people who hate traffic but love being alone. The story was about a guy from a parcel service. He'd gone missing 2 days earlier. Last seen doing a late drop on the west side. His truck got found empty near a vacant lot, like someone had peeled the driver out of it. They showed his photo. Mid-40s, dad haircut. Eyes that said he'd had enough package misdeliveries to haunt him. The anchor read his name, and then did the thing where they say, "If you have any information, call this number," while the camera slowly zooms in, like the number might hypnotize you into humanity. I felt it. The little cold fingertip on the back of my neck. Not much. Just a brush. I thought, that's creepy. The guys at the booths made the usual jokes. "That's why I don't work nights," said one, who absolutely did not work at all, and I took the large out to a family minivan with crusts on the floor older than the kid in the back seat. Nothing exciting. I didn't think about it again until the phone rang at 11:17. Late orders are their own species. You can hear the difference in the first second. Drunks slur. Stoners negotiating with themselves about toppings. Moms who finally got the baby down and realized they haven't eaten since the Sesame Street morning block. This one was none of that. The guy on the other end sounded boring, which is honestly my favorite kind of customer. Polite, clear, gave the address without making me repeat it. Large cheese, bottled water, no contact if you can, he added, like we weren't in the phase of the world that made half the town say that anyway. "No problem," I said. "Cash or card?" "Card," he said. Then there was a tiny pause, like he'd turned his head from the phone. "I'll leave the porch light on." It was the boringness that stuck. The tone was flat, normal. The call was short. No weird jokes, no creepy flirts, no throw in extra ranch negotiation. I wrote it down. I loaded the hot bag. I told Valerio I'd close up after this one and bring back the deposit. He waved a sausage hand at me without turning around. "Don't get robbed," he said, which is his way of saying, "Be safe." I tossed him the look that says I'll do my best, and then the bell did its non-committal jingle, and I carried the pizza through the parking lot, where the lights buzz louder than mosquitoes. You've driven that way. Past the closed thrift store, past the church that looks haunted even during the day. The street isn't out in the country, but it feels like it after midnight. The houses spread out and pull away from the curb like they're tired of traffic and people. I had the radio low and the windows cracked because my car always smells like garlic, and somehow that helps. The address was a little farther than I liked for a last run, but within our delivery radius. I did that mental math we all do, tip potential versus gas, and decided to trust the card. When the GPS said I had arrived, I thought it was wrong. I was in front of a house I swear I've never noticed, even though I must have driven past it 100 times. It sat back from the road, hunched behind a thicket of hedge and a lawn that had given up on being a lawn and started being a rumor. No porch light, despite what he'd said. No motion sensor chicken dance of headlights hitting the house. It was just there, a rectangle that swallowed the shared light of the night like a whole. The house was old, and I don't mean charming old like the ones with wraparound porches that look like they've seen nice family photos. I mean old like it ate paint chips until the paint became dust. The windows were unlit squares. The roofline had that slight slump of a person who's carried too many heavy grocery bags alone. The chimney looked crooked. I could have convinced myself that was the angle of the street if everything else weren't also a little off. There were no neighbors on either side. The closest house was back across the intersection, and even that one kept its distance like a kid at the dentist. I put the car in park, but I left it running. Habit, I guess, or instinct. I grabbed the hot bag and the bottled water and walked up the path, which wasn't a path so much as a suggestion from some weeds that maybe people had once believed in concrete. The air felt colder near the house. Not temperature cold exactly. More like the way a kitchen feels colder after you open the freezer. I stepped up onto the porch and realized two things at once. One, there was no doorbell. Two, there was a knocker that looked like it had heard more secrets than it was comfortable with. I lifted it. The metal was colder than it should have been. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, stronger. Sometimes people are in the shower. Sometimes they're half asleep. Sometimes they're halfway down a bottle of something and time is a concept. I waited, holding the pizza like a shield. Still nothing. I leaned and tried the old school move. "Valerio's Pizza," I said, loud but not aggressive. "Order for..." I realized I hadn't put a name on the ticket. It was just the address. Usually I always write the first name. It's a stupid pride thing. Like I want to hand it over saying, "Hey Jason, enjoy." But this one had been quick, and I hadn't bothered. "Order for you," I finished lamely. The house swallowed my voice. I glanced around like maybe the customer would appear out of the bushes with headphones on and apologize. It was just me in the car idling, and the banana-shaped moon going down like it was embarrassed. I tried again. I rapped on the door with my fist. The wood felt spongy under the paint, like my knuckles left fingerprints in rot I couldn't see. That's when I noticed the window to the left of the door had a gap in the curtain. It was a thin strip of dark that might have been nothing, or a little invitation. I know. Don't look in windows. I've said that to people. I believe in privacy even when I bring you thin circles of bread covered in other circles. But delivery drivers live by exceptions. One time I had a guy pass out on the couch with his TV volume at 2, and the only reason I didn't leave and charge him a missed delivery fee was because I checked the window and saw his chest move. So yeah, sometimes we peek, like doctors peeking at charts before they knock, and we pretend it was purely procedural. I stepped over to the window and peered through the gap. At first, my eyes did the thing where they see their own reflection and make a little jump scare of it. Then, slowly, the dark indoors admitted shapes: a table, a chair, a lamp that wasn't on, a woman sitting. I thought she was looking down at her phone, head tilted a little, hands on the table, hair to her shoulders. She was very still in that I'm doing a word puzzle way. It didn't ping me as weird right away. I tapped the glass lightly with a knuckle and said, "Hey, Valerio's." Nothing. I tapped again and raised my voice. "Hey, pizza." She didn't move. It was like she was listening for a sound behind me, not in front of her. I felt the hair on my arms lift. I have never liked mannequins. I don't even like those open house flip books with staged living rooms because the lamps are on in the daytime like you're trying to trick me. This felt like that. The stillness wasn't busy. It was just still. I went back to the door, and this time I knocked enough to make my shoulder feel it. I'm not a big guy, but my bangs pack a punch. "I am here," I said, half because I was annoyed and half because my throat needed to prove I existed. "I swear to you." The second the word "here" came out of my mouth, a sound exploded inside the house. Not like a door slamming, not like a cat knocking something off a shelf. It was a thud, 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 quick and heavy, like something heavy meeting stairs fast and unwillingly. A body. I knew it as it happened. That was the shape of the sound. Mass, movement, then sudden stop. Everything in me went tight. My hand stayed flat against the door like I could feel the tremor of the noise through the wood. But the house was quiet again. Dead quiet. I told myself it was someone dropping boxes, or dragging luggage, or a dog tumbling down like a cartoon. It didn't feel like any of those. Curiosity is the dumbest powerful force. It dressed itself up as concern and patted me on the back. I went to the window again because the house did not want to give me a single normal thing, and I needed one. The woman had not moved. The darkness inside the living room was a living thing. I pulled my phone out and turned on the flashlight. The screen glow washed my palm white, and then the beam found the glass, reflected a bit, and pushed a weak cone into the room. She was right there. The light caught her cheek. I thought I was looking at a trick at first. A Halloween mask, maybe, or a filter the house was applying to my brain. The left side of her face was wrong. It wasn't just pale. It was damp looking in that way that makes your stomach think of food left in the sink too long. The skin had sunk toward the bone, and the corner of her mouth had a smear that had turned hard in the shape rot makes when it becomes a thing of its own. Old wet bread, gone green. The line crept from the curve of her lip to her ear, climbing, like mold follows cracks in paint. The smell hit me then, even through the old sash window. Not a passing smell. The kind that says, "We have lived here for weeks." Her eyes were open. That blank look, I know it now. It's not a movie dead. It's a dead that used to be a person and is now a space where the person was. I had the thought like a shout in my head. She's dead. But it came with a stupid argument from the other half of my brain. Maybe she's very sick. Maybe it's makeup. Maybe it's a prank. Maybe. I realized I'd been holding the pizza bag like a child, high against my chest, and my arms were tired. They only got to notice that because something changed outside. I heard footsteps in the grass to my right. Not on the porch. The porch didn't creak, but on the lawn near the hedge, where the dark was thicker than it had any right to be. Grass whispers are different from gravel crunches. These were crisp. 2 steps. 3. I didn't point the light toward it. That wasn't a decision I made with my brain. That was something older. I pulled the pizza bag to my hip like a fumbled football, and I turned and I didn't run, because something told me running would make noise, and noise would make me more real. I walked fast. My shoes found the edges of the cracked path without care. The bag felt like it weighed nothing, but my hands were sweaty and slick. I reached the car. I fumbled the handle. I dropped the bottled water onto the driveway and didn't pick it up. I slid in and slammed the door so hard the window shuddered. The car was still running, thank God, and I threw it into reverse and didn't even check the mirror. I spun into the road, tires protesting, and then I straightened out and drove. I didn't look back. My heart was beating in a staccato that matched the turn signal click I'd forgotten to turn off. Here's the stupidest part. You're going to judge me and I'll take it. I didn't drive to the police station. I didn't even drive home. I drove back to Valerio's. Robot programming. I can joke about it now because my therapist told me to give myself a break about my choices under stress. But at the time, my thoughts were literally, deposit the card slips, lock the register, wipe the counter. My brain had shoved everything frightening into a closet and was stacking work on top of it like a teenager hiding laundry when company comes over. The bell on the door complained when I came in. The place felt violated by the empty. I put the hot bag on the counter and realized the pizza inside had leaned and slid. 2 slices were no longer slices. I stared at the grease soaking through the cardboard and had this weird thought that I should comp the customer for the mess. Then my knees went soft in the way an elevator dips when it stops too fast, and I set the bag down because I didn't want to find out what the floor felt like. I shut off the open sign and turned the deadbolt. I went into the back and sat on a flower bin because it was the first thing my body found that would hold me up. The walk-in hummed like a distant plane. I could feel the cold of it through the wall, and it felt like the house's cold twin had followed me. My hands were shaking. It wasn't the excited kind. It was the aftermath kind. The joints feeling hollow. The breath going in too fast. I stared at the phone for a long time. Calling the police felt like I was admitting the world had gone non-fiction in a genre I don't like. There's a layer of distance that comes with doing something official. If I didn't call yet, maybe this could be filed under weird dream I had while awake. So I sat. I told myself I'd wait until midnight and see if the fear evaporated. Midnight found me. Then 1. Then 2. I took 2 sips of tap water and they tasted like pennies. I changed out of my delivery hoodie because I was suddenly aware it smelled like the house smell, even if that was probably my brain. I took a mop I didn't need and moved it from one corner to another because the body wants a job when the brain is useless. Around 2:30, my robot programming snapped at me like a drill sergeant. Call. So I called. My voice did the weird, quiet, loud thing on the first sentence, and then remembered how to be human. I'm a delivery driver, I said. I think I saw a dead person. I'm not sure what else I saw. I heard. And then I said it all at once, and the woman on the other end got very still in her voice, and asked me to repeat the address twice. They told me to wait at the shop and that officers would go to the house. I sat on the bucket and watched the dark through the front windows turn into the very early morning gray that looks like the world is considering being a place again. That color made me ache. It was the color of being up too late in high school. It was the color of staying awake with a sick dog. It was the color of leaving a party after everyone else already went home. At 5 a.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I thought it was a spam call for a second and almost let it go. A man's voice, calm but tight at the edges, said he was with the police and asked if I could come down to the station to talk, or if I preferred to speak on the phone. I said phone, because the idea of walking out into the morning felt like walking into a different planet. He asked all the questions again, slower, like the important part might be what I remembered the second time. He asked for the call time. He asked if I still had the number the order came from. He asked whether I'd ever delivered to that address before. I hadn't. Around 8, the same voice called back with an update. He had that professional, careful tone, like he was carrying something for me and didn't want to bump it. The house you went to, he said, has been vacant for a long time. County records say nobody's legally occupied it in about 20 years. Neighbors say it's been empty longer than anyone remembers. It's condemned. There's no water running to it. No electric meter on the side. We found no sign of any furniture on the first floor, except a table and 2 chairs. I didn't say anything. I was looking at the mop, because the mop felt like a child's toy, next to the words coming through the phone. He went on. We found a woman at the table, deceased. Based on preliminary evaluation, she's been dead approximately 2 weeks. She matches the description of a delivery driver reported missing about a month ago from a different service. His voice dipped softer, personal inside the professional. We also found a male deceased on the staircase, mid-40s. We believe he is the package delivery driver from the news reports 2 days ago. I closed my eyes. The thud, thud, thud rewound and played itself again. The word staircase glued itself to the sound in my head and won't unstick, even now. There are other details, he said carefully. A set of boot prints inside and outside. They're not from either of the deceased. They're the clearest thing we have. We're casting them. There's no sign of a robbery. No sign of vandalism. We're tracing the call you received. It appears to have originated from a prepaid cell. We're working that angle. I said, so that was the actual missing driver on the stairs? My voice sounded small in my own ear, like the kid version of me had borrowed my phone. It appears so, the detective said. It looks like he was kept at that location. We're waiting on time of death confirmation. He paused. Also, something interesting. The other drivers that have gone missing recently, from other pizza shops, a courier service, none of them were on shift when they vanished. We checked time cards. They were on vacation or off the schedule when they disappeared. The last deliveries they made were weeks before. 2 weeks. In 2 cases. Whoever is doing this is patient. They're choosing people, not routes. They're calling them in somehow. The word calling burned a line through my night. That boring, normal voice on the phone. No stutters. No excitement. Just a person ordering a cheese pizza and bottled water like he didn't plan to eat any of it. Did he pay with a card? I asked, stupidly, like that could buy the cops a lead. Stolen card, he said. Already flagged. You'll get reimbursed for the chargeback. Great, I said, because that's what the robot says when someone mentions money in the middle of fear. Then human me came back up through that and said, I don't want the money. All right, he said, and I could hear him filing that away in the kindness drawer. He asked me a few more things, the kind of details that seem small, but turn out to matter later in movies. Did you hear anyone breathing? Did the voice on the phone have an accent? Was there any smell outside? That last one made me clench my teeth. I told him yes. He didn't say he was sorry. I liked him better for that. Sorry is a sound, and I'd had enough sounds for the night. He told me not to go back to the house, like that would ever happen. He told me someone would come by the shop to take my statement in person later that day. And could I please save the caller ID and any records I had? I said yes, and hung up and realized my hands had been gripping the phone so hard my knuckles were pale. By then the sky was the version of blue that makes birds loud. The shopping center's empty sea of parking spaces had become a place again. I stepped outside and the air felt like it had been washed. I wanted to be clean like that, and I wasn't. I locked the door and put the deposit back in the safe. And then I wrote a note on a scrap of receipt paper that said, "Closed today. Sorry," and taped it to the glass with the delicacy of someone who doesn't want to hurt the window. I drove home the long way. Because the short way passed too close to the house, I would not pass again. My hands kept doing a little juking motion on the steering wheel, like they were dodging something. I kept the radio off. Music felt disrespectful to the silence I needed, and talk radio felt like an invitation for someone else to lecture my thoughts. I slept for an hour, if you can call it sleep. I woke up in a position that made my shoulder ache, and my jaw feel like I'd been chewing on a mouthguard I don't own. My phone told me the story had already made the morning shows. My phone kept telling me that for 2 days. The news vans parked near the block the house sat on. They interviewed the neighbors, who suddenly remembered things about a house they'd forgotten for 20 years. A woman with strong eyebrows told a camera that teenagers used to dare each other to go up on the porch. A man I have never seen in my life told a radio person that he'd always had a bad feeling, like the house could feel him looking at it. The graphics people made ominous title cards between car insurance ads. Stares of silence, one of them said, which made me want to throw my phone into the sink. The police didn't say much publicly, but word travels in a place like ours. Someone at a coffee shop knew someone whose cousin dated a mechanic who services squad cars, and that's how I heard about the boot prints first. Deep treads, expensive boots, the kind you'd wear if you wanted nobody to guess where you worked from your shoes. I guess that's a clue if you're doing detective math. To me, it just felt like more weight on the invisible air near that house. I kept replaying the sound of the thuds on the stairs. I kept seeing the woman at the table, caught in my phone's small cone of light. The story in the paper said she'd been a driver for a different pizza place, across town. She'd been on vacation when she went missing. Her boss assumed she'd gone somewhere without cell service. People do that. People can be bad at checking in even on a good day. Nobody thought to wonder if she'd gone to a house that doesn't live anywhere anymore. The detective called me again 2 days later, and he sounded tired, He said they were analyzing the phone records and that the call to us had bounced around a network of burners. They were checking the previous calls made from the same devices and had found orders placed to a couple of other shops, but the orders had been canceled before drivers went out, like someone was testing how things worked. He said there was no sign anything had been taken from the victims. Wallets were in pockets, phones were in bags, dead or smashed but present. It wasn't robbery. The word he used was calculated, and he didn't have to tell me that. I knew it from the stillness in that living room. I knew it from the timing of the thud. I went to work the next week like a person learns to walk again after twisting an ankle. Gentle, a little crooked. Valerio offered me the early shifts, which meant delivering sunlight instead of midnight. I took them, and even then I stopped taking orders from numbers that popped up weird in our system. We all do that now. The shop's new policy is no cash after 9, and no one complains because everyone wants to pretend rules make us safe. I stopped sitting with my back to windows. I started locking my car doors, even when I was only dropping off a pizza for 5 seconds. Even in neighborhoods where the worst thing happening outside is a sprinkler that doesn't turn right. I kept thinking about the footsteps in the grass, soft and present. Whoever that was, I don't know how close they got. I don't know if they were 10 feet away or 2. Every time my brain tries to measure it, I smell that old house again, and my tongue stings like I bit it. I wonder if the footsteps were a new arrival, or someone who'd been waiting for me to announce myself in my idiot voice. There are nights I imagine alternate versions, one where I walk inside, one where I go around the back, one where I keep the light off. None of those end well. The path I took, the one that is basically drop the pizza and run, was the only one I had. People have asked me why I yelled, "I am here," like I was announcing myself to a ghost. I don't know. It's what came out. Maybe part of me wanted the house to answer. Maybe part of me wanted the living or the dead to cover for me and tell me I was delivering to the wrong address. They never caught whoever did it. At least not while I was still there. The news moved on to other monsters. The detective stopped calling. He didn't forget me. He just had to carry all that for other people too. There were a few more updates buried in the metro section. Tests confirmed time of deaths. The woman had been killed around 2 weeks prior to my night. The man within the last 48 hours. Marks consistent with falls, and with other things that made me stop reading and check the lock on my door twice. The detail that stuck with me most wasn't the boot prints after all. It was a sentence about how the phones of both victims had pinged one cell tower in the same neighborhood the day before each disappeared. Different days. Same tower. That tower stands a mile and change from Valerio's. I drove past it every morning. I stopped looking. You asked me why I left. That's why. That, and also the quieter, smaller reasons. The way the lid pops on the sauce bucket and my chest goes tight for a second for no reason. The way the porch steps at normal houses creak and my brain maps them to that other sound. The way customers say, "Leave it at the door," like they're doing me a favor and not talking like ghosts do. I held out for a month because I'm stubborn, and rent is rent. I took cash tips I didn't want, and nodded at people who said, "Hey, aren't you the guy from the thing?" Like they were pointing out a stain on my shirt. Then one evening, I drove past a yard where kids were building a stupid little fort out of couch cushions and 2 patio chairs. And they were so proud of the shape they'd made in the air. I cried at a stop sign about chairs. I went home and packed a bag. I gave Valerio my 2 weeks because I'm that kind of person, and he waved his sausage hand at me and said, "Don't be stupid," which is how he says, "I'll miss you." I found a room in a different city through a friend of a friend. I got a job where my nights end when the sky goes the right kind of dark, and my hands smell like coffee instead of pepperoni. I swore I'd never deliver again, and I haven't. I don't even do those locker pickups at the grocery store anymore. You can laugh. It's fine. Every job teaches you something. Delivering taught me how people are mostly kind, and how doors mean all kinds of things depending on what's behind them. It taught me you can live an entire small life between a car and a stoop. It taught me that the sentence, "leave it at the door," can be an invitation or a threat depending on how the air tastes. I still have questions. I won't get answers, and most days I don't want them. Who killed them? Was I about to be the next? Did the boot prints belong to someone official looking, or someone who knew how to look like nobody? Why order a cheese pizza and a bottled water you don't intend to drink? Just to make me come to the door? Or did he want to see what I would do with the darkness inside that house? Did someone watch me look through the glass and make a note? Did the footsteps stop because I scared them, or because I did exactly what they wanted? There was no robbery. The news kept saying that like it helped. No robbery. No motive you can hold. You know how you can tell when a person enters a room where you're sitting with your back turned, and you can feel the air shift like a quiet dog's breath? That's the thing I can't shake. I was near a thing that breathes like that. It breathes in and out, and each time it does, it changes the way the world feels. It's not a ghost. It's not some folklore thing you can salt the door against. It's smarter than that, and more boring than that. And somehow those two things together make it worse. I know this reads like a campfire story, and I wish it was. I wish I could say the house had a specific name and a family history with 3 tragedies and a light that turns itself on sometimes in just one window. I wish I could say the police knocked on my door yesterday and told me they'd caught the guy because he used his loyalty card at a hardware store and bought too much plastic. But there isn't a gift-wrapped ending. There's just a note on a file and a detective who probably still thinks about that staircase, even when he's checking out at the grocery store. There's just a house that maybe the city will finally tear down, and a square patch of lawn where grass grows different because blood got into it. I moved, like I said. I changed numbers, and I stopped checking the news for my old town. When I drive at night now, it's under streetlights that work, and I turn off before the road turns lonely. I talk to you about it because you've asked, and because telling it out loud makes me feel like the person it happened to is still me, and not a ghost I'm babysitting. I don't want to be dramatic. I don't want to make a myth out of a bad person with a plan. But sometimes, late, when my new apartment is quiet and my neighbor's dog finally stops clicking his nails down the hall, I catch myself listening for a sound that isn't in the room. A thud, and then another, and then another, marching down a place I am not. I make myself breathe. I drink cold water, and it tastes like nothing. I go back to bed. Before I sleep, I look at my phone and I check for missed calls, and there never are any from numbers I don't know, and I feel both grateful and a little foolish for checking, like I'm trying to catch a shadow in the act of being a shadow. If you order a pizza late, tip well. Be nice to the person who knocks. If they look past you, forgive them. We get good at reading rooms fast, and sometimes the light hits something in the corner, and our gut throws a handbrake. There are nights I think that's what saved me. Not bravery, not smarts, just the dumb luck of listening to the animal part of my brain that said, quietly but urgently, it's time to go. Leave it at the door and leave. I could end this by saying something neat, like how I learned to trust myself, or how the world is both kinder and stranger than I thought. But that would make this into a moral, and it doesn't have one. It's just a thing that happened. It took two people who were doing normal jobs, and it almost took me, and we'll never get neat answers. We'll get fragments, a boot print in dried mud, a silent phone, a house with no meter on the side, a woman at a table who hasn't moved in 2 weeks but still sits like she's waiting for someone to pass the salt. I promise you this, though, because promises still matter to me. If I ever hear that thud in my head and think it's real again, I won't go toward the window. I won't even look sideways at the glass. I'll do what I should have done that night, and what I did, thankfully, by accident. I'll turn around and I'll go. Not because the thing behind me is magic, because it is a person who learned how to make the dark into a tool, and I refuse to be part of his tool belt again. That house will come down one day. Someone will build a new one there, one of those ugly modern cubes with big windows, and people will drink white wine and laugh in a kitchen that has an island the size of a bed. They won't know the house they replaced was a mouth that chewed quietly. They won't feel the cold at the edge of the lawn. Good for them. The world should keep moving. As for me, I moved with it. I kept my head down. I made new routes that include sitting on the stoop of a bakery at noon with a pretzel and feeling the sun on my hands. I learned to sleep again without listening for grass. I quit the job that taught me a lot and took something from me I don't have a name for. I tell you this now because sometimes saying the thing out loud is the only way to keep it from repeating. I don't want it to happen to anyone else. I don't want to ever drive up a road again and not be sure the house at the end is on my side of the world. If you hear a voice on the phone at 11:17 that sounds perfectly ordinary and it asks you to come closer to something that feels wrong, say no. Say you're closed. Say your car won't start. Say anything. Don't say, I am here. Don't give the dark a name to work with. I got lucky once. I'm not here for a sequel. I'm not a character in someone else's game. I was a pizza driver. I am a person who left. I will never wear that hot bag again. I will never walk up a path where the porch light is a lie. And if you've listened this far, and you're thinking about the last time you peered through your own curtains at something in your yard, don't. Go back to the couch. Sit down. Breathe. If the world wants to come inside, it'll knock. If it doesn't, if it has to trick you into opening up, it's not the world you want. That's all. That's the story. I'm still here. I intend to keep it that way.